Hi, it's Michael Weber from Porchlight. This special edition of Behind the Show Backstory focuses on all the productions that will be part of our Porchlight Revisits series next season. Now, for those of you who have attended Porchlight Revisits, you know that before every performance, we do a live Behind the Show Backstory presentation about the show that you're about to see, focusing on how the show was made, the year in which it took place on Broadway, and a little diagnosis of why you don't see it performed as much as maybe, say, other musicals. So until then, consider this Behind the Show Backstory, a Behind the Show Backstory of the upcoming Behind the Show Backstories. And we'll see you at Porchlight Revisits. First off, Porchlight Revisits Assassins, with music and lyrics by Stephen Sondheim and a book by John Weidman, which premiered off-Broadway at Playwrights Horizons on December 18, 1990. Based on historical events, the production's origins date back to 1979, when, as a panelist at producer Stuart Ostro's Musical Theater Lab, Sondheim read a script by playwright Charles Gilbert Jr. entitled Assassins, about a Vietnam veteran who becomes a presidential assassin. Sondheim was inspired by its title, its use of quotes from various historical figures who had attempted to assassinate American presidents, and its opening scene in a shooting gallery with the lighted sign, "Shoot the Prez and win a prize," which was eventually incorporated into the musical. Sondheim asked Gilbert for permission to use his idea. Gilbert consented and offered to write the book, but Sondheim declined, having already had collaborator John Weidman in mind. Weidman had written the book for Pacific Overtures and would work with Sondheim again on Roadshow. Directed by Jerry Zaks and featuring a cast including Jonathan Hadary, Victor Garber, Terrence Mann, Annie Golden, Deborah Monk, Patrick Cassidy, and more, the show sold out as soon as previews began, reflecting the enthusiastic anticipation of a new Sondheim musical. This first go at the show received mixed reviews, with the New York Times commenting, "Assassins will have to fire with sharper aim and fewer blanks if it is to shoot to kill." Porchlight Music Theater presented the piece in February 2007, and, with another presidential election season upon us, Porchlight Revisits Assassins will surely be an anticipated production. Next up, Porchlight Revisits Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, with music by Julie Stein, lyrics by Leo Robin, and a book by Joseph Fields and Anita Luce, based on her best-selling 1925 novel of the same name that opened at the Ziegfeld Theater December 8, 1949. It's one of several famous novels published in 1925, including F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby and Carl Van Vechten's Firecrackers, which chronicle the hedonistic era known as the Jazz Age. Luce was inspired to write the novel by an incident aboard a train bound for Hollywood. She recalled, "I was allowed to lug a heavy suitcase from the rack while men sat about and failed to note my efforts. And yet when another young woman happened to drop the novel she was reading, several men jumped up to retrieve it." Luce surmised this difference in men's behavior was because the woman was a blonde, while she herself was a brunette. When drafting the novel, Luce drew upon memories of observing, as she said, witless blondes turn the intellectual H.L. Mencken, her publisher and friend, into a love-struck schoolboy. Although dismissed by critics as too light in texture to be very enduring, Luce's book was a runaway hit, becoming the second best-selling title of 1926, printed throughout the world, and earning the praise of Edith Wharton, who dubbed it the great American novel. Following a 1926 Broadway play adaptation and 1928 film, the stage musicalization introduced Carol Channing as a lead actor in a book musical backed up by comedy favorites George S. Irving, Howard Morris, Rita Shaw, and Charles Honey Coles. Following the smash 1953 film version starring Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell, a 1974 adaptation of the musical called Lorelei was a great excuse to draw Carol Channing back to Broadway in one of her greatest characterizations, proving gentlemen still prefer blondes. And finally, Porchlight Revisits Do Black Patent Leather Shoes Really Reflect Up? With music and lyrics by James Quinn and Alaric Jans, and a book by John R. Powers based on his 1975 novel, which opened on Broadway at the Alvin Theater, now the Neil Simon, May 27, 1982. The 1950s coming-of-age story explores the Catholic education of 8 Chicago children, following them from the start of elementary school through the senior prom and beyond. Along the way, it touches on such topics as first confessions, puppy love, patron saints, teachers' pets, sex education classes, and the importance of not wearing patent leather shoes as they could reflect up under a girl's school uniform plaid pleated skirts. The production originated in 1979 at the Forum Theater in suburban Summit, Illinois, where it was a colossal hit, running 4.5 years, becoming the longest-running Chicago area production until that time. Featuring up-and-coming actors Megan Mullally, Brad Hall, Anthony Crivillo, and Chloe Webb, among many others, Shoes continued to break house records during its run in Philadelphia and Detroit. However, the show did not duplicate its success on Broadway. Directed by actor-director Mike Nussbaum, who helmed the Chicago run, it closed after only 5 performances. John Powers felt he understood what happened when he recalled, "The critics were expecting a biting anti-Catholic satire. When they didn't see it, they let us have it." Following the Broadway flop, Shoes returned to the Walnut Street Theater, home of its earlier hit engagement in Philadelphia. In 11 weeks, it did such good business that it immediately repaid its investors. From there, the production went on to engagements in Boston, Cleveland, Washington, D.C., and St. Louis, proving that when it comes to the audience pleasure and financial success of any piece of theater, Broadway is never the be-all and the end-all. In anticipation of all these great shows, we look forward to seeing you this season at Porchlight Revisits.